everyone, and welcome to today's virtual event, AI plus human expertise, smarter decisions start here. We are so happy to have you all here for this conversation. Please join me in welcoming our panel for today. We have Jack Cochran, the GM of PreSales Collective, Chris Gomes, head of product, who moonlights as their head of PreSales at Conveyor. We've got TJ Guyton, solutions professional at Figma, Maria Latt, senior manager of solutions engineering at HubSpot. Welcome, welcome. Give them a big hello. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Please chat up in the chat. Please share your thoughts, your LinkedIn URLs, your ideas, your insights. But if you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That's where we will do Q&A for the last portion of today's webinar. Also, please switch your settings on your Zoom chat to everyone instead of hosts and panelists so we can all see what you have to say. On that note, I will pass it off to Jack to kick things off.
Thanks, Courtney, and welcome everyone who has, I won't say called in now, but has actually joined us for the webinar. Thanks for everyone being here. Please do join the conversation with us there as we're going along. And as Courtney had said, we will be at the end having plenty of time for Q&A for our panel. So make sure getting those questions in. You can save them for later to see if we handle them. You can throw them in as we are going along if you'd like as well. Today, we're talking all about AI plus humans, so smarter pre-sales, how we can do what we do better using AI. It's a topic I know we've actually covered a couple times, but if people keep wanting more of this topic, so we're happy to continue the conversation today. And what I want to start off with, the question I want to get at is if we're looking at all the different types of tasks that we all have within our day-to-day, how do you identify what decisions should be AI driven versus what things you should be relying solely on human expertise? TJ, I'd like to start off with you kind of answering this question. How do you start to identify what should be a human-based decision or what should be an AI driven or AI plus human decision?
Well, that's a good question. I would say where we're currently at, I'm not sure I want, AI making decisions yet. In my experience, like working with all these different tools, all this generative technology, reliability, I think, is one of my number one things lately. And I'm not sure I've seen an example of any of these tools being able to make these kind of traditionally human-led decisions effectively and reliably. That said, like there's lots of day-to-day tasks and little things we're finding they're really good at, things like transformation. So I work a lot with like code and design systems, and you go back a couple of years, transforming like one document to another format was a whole process. And now LLMs are extremely efficient at that, which is really nice when you're building up assets and things. So in short, like I normally am not going to rely on AI to make decisions, but it definitely can help augment us and help provide context that helps us make our decisions. But I'm not, in the future maybe, but I don't think we're quite there yet on our team to be offloading important decision making to any of these AI tools yet.
Yeah, definitely hear you there. Maria, I know you've got some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, and I really don't think, to echo what TJ was saying, I don't know that we're at that point yet where AI can make all the decisions. I don't even think there's a perfect framework. And I actually like to think of it as like versus like an either or, but like more of a how can it work best together. So some of the things I think about where AI really does shine is the pieces like, is it high volume? Is there a ton of data? Are there like clear, predictable patterns where we can offset and offload AI to do? Because I think that is for most of us what takes up most of our time is just the mundane, redundant parts of our day to day. So I think that's where AI does a really good job. But in terms of where humans still shine is the nuanced part. So a lot of our role as a pre-sales professional is to have that empathy and like understand where customers are at in their buying journey, but also what pain points they're solving for. And so a lot of the creativity and how we're providing solutions is really still something that I believe humans are better at. SEs are great at understanding the gray and translating it. And also too, like as we think about like ethical judgment, I think it's still really important that humans are involved in the decision-making process. So I think a lot of it is kind of the best of both worlds. How can we offset the things that are very repetitive and redundant, giving that to AI, and then us taking care of the more complex critical thinking pieces of the role?
Yeah, definitely that kind of working together. I'm seeing some of the chat. Yeah, the humans in the loop type of a conversation. I guess follow up to what you were saying before, TJ, agentic AI, which I know is becoming also another big piece. would you consider that as making decisions, or is that still kind of where you would still want to rely on just your own when it comes to that?
I mean, I think we could like do a turtles all the way down situation of what is a decision. Uh, in my experience, agents normally they're trying to follow my instructions. So they might go and make decisions following a prompt that I give them. But even a lot of time, I'm sitting there kind of hand in hand watching the agent, monitoring its use, because more often than not, we're having to redirect it, reject some of its decision making, reject some of its like the things that it's creating, or just really hold its hand. So really more what I'm saying is, am I giving an agent the power to make these big decisions without having a human alongside to review it? And I think we're getting there. I mean, we see things like background agents being used to go through your code base, open pull requests for little bugs, or add little import statements and things. And I guess it could be argued that that's giving the AI the ability to make decisions. But even then, humans still end up reviewing those pull requests. And I still don't think we can fully trust those agents yet. Like in my experience, yeah, sometimes they're shockingly good. More often than not, they take a lot of coaching, a lot of hand holding, and that's kind of how I see it. I mean, I like tasking them with things and working with them and getting some of the benefit, but I don't think we can just let, in my experience, I haven't found a great use case to just let them do their work without frequent, human in the loop iteration, resetting constraints, really trying to get them moving on like a path that works, from beginning to end.
The pull request analogy, I just wanted to say, is such a good framework, I think, where it's like open PRs all day long and let a human decide if we're going to actually approve and merge that pull request. This has nothing to do with pre-sales, and I promise it'll be the only thing that I go off topic on. But I had a basil plant that I started from seed, and it was like 4 inches tall. And I was like, is it time to prune it yet? And I took a photo and sent it to Claude and said, is this puppy ready to be pruned? And Claude said, this looks like the perfect time to prune it. And so I pruned it. And this thing just keeled over like a day later. And I sent a photo to Claude and I said, what happened? And it said, it looks like you pruned it too early. And I was like, I got nobody to blame but myself. Here I am taking photos of my basil plant and sending it to Claude. But yeah, I think we are at the stage where having an agent that can really kind of tee things up for you, and so that an informed human can then make the call. I think that's the right place to be, and not just handing over those decisions to an agent.
It's almost like we want the agents to make the decisions we would have made if we were informed. But we're not yet saying I want it to make decisions that might differ from me, right? Because I think that's what you were saying, TJ. At that point, when it's making a decision differently than you would have as an expert, you need to fix it versus going, well, is this maybe another way to think about it? We're not quite there yet, right?
I think as long as the fix is easy to, as long as if it's easy to reverse, then you can certainly start to, try and give agents certain capabilities to make those decisions. But if it's a one-way door, that's tough to sign off the decision to hand off the decision to an agent.
It's
Right.
I also kind of see it like in solutions, there's always been how much time do you want to spend automating systems versus how much time are you going to do the work? And like kind of finding that balance between creating these automations that scale and get all this stuff done versus just digging in and doing the work. And I've kind of been feeling the same with agents where, yeah, they're pretty cool, but am I getting a net positive result out of having to spend all this time handholding them? And sometimes yes, but I also think it's in the same camp where we can also spend all of our time coaching and managing and mentoring and guiding these agents to maybe not a net positive output or an improved quality on the other side. So that's a kind of another consideration I have.
Yeah. I definitely agree. It's a little bit about how, yeah. I love that because we've been struggling with that. The whole automation question is not a new thing. That's not an AI thing. That's always been at what point are you putting in more work than you're going to get out of the result that you've helped to make better, right? So if we think about that specifically within AI, I'd love to hear some examples of maybe instances where we have done things, spent time building the automation that's AI based, or that has helped to improve our teams. I know in our prep, Chris, you had mentioned that you had kind of an example of something you had done in this area. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it's I saw someone mention Lovable in the chat, And I'm not just trying to grossly suck up to TJ over here, but we love Figma Make, and it's not like an automation of a process, but we will go from, a large customer has a feature request, and this is actually going to be like a critical commitment that we as the product team have to make in order to win their business. And, the old days would be kind of like gather their requirements, do a little discovery to make sure you really understand it, take it back to the product team, think about a solution, mock up a solution, get some estimates on it, provide those estimates back to the customer, make sure it works for their timeline, maybe put it into a contract. And now it's like, especially because I'm, uniquely positioned and that I'm on the product team, but when I'm on these calls with prospects, I can say, oh, okay, hold on just 1 minute and actually show them something, turn it around and get their feedback right then and there on, is this kind of what you're looking for? And I think Figma Make and a lot of these tools are very helpful in that, just like we were saying before, it's presenting, and in some respects, you're giving it a prompt and it's making a decision about how to interpret or translate that. But it's very easy to say, yes, more of that, or no, 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 roll that one back. That's not quite what I was looking for. And as long as these tools make it easy to do that, then you can really, really rapidly iterate with them.
Yeah. Maria, I know you had some examples as well about using AI to enhance versus replacing your teams working with your teams.
Yeah, and my team overall, we haven't really gotten to the point where we've been able to automate a lot of our processes. We're sort of at that beginning stages of how can it help us up level in many ways. So what my team's doing is using Gemini to up level demo skills. I know a lot of folks today are using it for prepping for demos, like understand like the company, like and maybe understand some challenges that may not necessarily come up in calls. But where I see it up leveling SEs in a different way is having SEs self-assess like where they're at, like how did my demo go? What did I miss? And I love that SEs are taking almost their own like career development in their own hands by uploading a transcript from Gong to Gemini and asking in their prompt, hey, just did this demo. I don't know that it landed quite well. Where are the areas that I missed? What areas could I double down on, knowing that there's going to be a follow-up call? And so that's been really cool to see my team use that to not replace what they do, but more so up level and enhance their demo skills. And then as they continue on the deal and the sales process, how can they build off of what they've already done or maybe course correct if the call didn't go so well. So that's been a really cool thing to see the team use AI for.
Yeah, I totally agree with that use case. And that's what we're seeing on our team as well. I do think it's like, from the demo perspective, it is awesome right now. Like we've never had so many tools that allow you to be expressive and customize your demo and really elevate it as we do now. Like an example would be, I've been using like generative LLMs to create tons of synthetic data when I'm going into certain customer conversations so that, I demo Figma all day, but I want to fill that canvas with something versus nothing. And so I can have a few agents generate tons of custom but mock synthetic data that we pull into the canvas and then we use to create more real, more expressive, more kind of rich demo experiences. And that's been awesome. Like that used to take a lot of time going into that prep and trying to get that stuff to a certain caliber. And now it takes a few minutes. So that's pretty cool.
You give me a little bit of a PTSD on demo prep, trying to create synthetic data. It was always, you're right, that used to be quite the headache. That yeah, has gotten so much better lately for sure. I guess the question I have TJ for you following what Chris was saying, do you at Figma use Figma Make in like behind the scenes as well for what you do?
Oh, totally. I mean, I am extremely bullish on Figma Make, mainly because there's a few reasons. One, I think we're getting into this era where we can build our own software. Like genuinely, if you have an idea for a tool, previously you had to go convince a company or a product team to go make this thing. Now you can just prompt it into existence if you have the taste and the vision. And so, for example, we do a lot of diagramming in our practice. We're constantly trying to like create these visualizations of technical concepts. And I created a make that allows me to diagram in the style that I want and it's totally kind of animated and the exact tool that I wanted. And I was able to create that in an afternoon. So similar to what Chris mentioned too, one of the coolest things about Make It early on was that now if I have an idea for our product, or if a customer gives me a piece of feedback, instead of just writing up a feature request, we go build a prototype and then give that prototype to the product team as a much more like tangible starting point to say like, this is how we're envisioning it, or this is what we see. And it makes the conversation more effective, and tends to build more excitement too, because instead of reading through this long text, you actually get a quick, immediate experience that includes interactivity, styling, UI, accessibility, all that stuff. So yeah, I use Make constantly, and I actually like Make too, because I'll have multiple tabs where I'm just prompting in between meetings, and then I come back to the agents, do another quick prompt in between meetings, and I can still keep like my customer facing work moving ahead while having these kind of things happening and getting built in the background.
Maria or TJ, have you guys used any of the like presentation tools where you can prompt a tool and make a presentation like Gamma? Have you heard of Gamma? Have you guys tried those or using them at all?
I haven't, or not Gamma specifically. I tried another one and I can't, it's escaping me the name. I'm curious your thoughts, Chris, because when I tried it, it didn't hit exactly. I think there was a lot of context that it couldn't necessarily, at least from like a HubSpot perspective, couldn't necessarily inject into the slides, but it was nice. It gave me a starting point, which I think is like half the battle is like, where can we just even start? Because I think a blank canvas is always really tough to work from.
Yeah, I
Chris,
see
I
Clay.
actually do.
Oh,
So
oh,
Chris, I
great.
actually do use Gamma for what I do, which for me is a lot of talking to uh, companies who are interested in learning more about Pre-Sales Collective, or maybe they're learning about our enablement programs, or they're trying to figure out how they can get involved. And so for me to be able to go, oh, I need a presentation that talks about these things and get something that's easily editable. The problem when I've talked to a lot of people is they go, well, we have got our marketing slides. We have to fit this specific template. But if you don't really necessarily care about that, and you can throw your own theming on it, tools, and I saw someone in the chat also mentioning beautiful.ai. The same idea here is if you don't want to be married to a certain template, you just want to get your ideas out there, you're spending less time moving stuff around and just able to kind of go. And so it's the very much I would recommend checking those out if you haven't yet.
Yeah. And from my perspective, obviously I have to plug the Figma stuff, but it's also what I use every day. So some of the cool features that I've found really helpful, one is, if you're in FigJam, and FigJam is our kind of whiteboarding canvas tool, that's normally where we're running workshops with our customers. And so you run an amazing workshop, you end up with tons of information. And the hardest part was always the synthesis of that. Like, how do I take all this insight and discovery that we just ran and turn it into something that's more of a presentation, or turn it into something that's more of a demo? And in FigJam, you can actually just select an area of the canvas and then push it into our slides program. And you can select the template. So we've got this branded template that our brand team created. I can push all of my workshops into that, and it creates a slides outline, and using the template, using the content of the workshop. And again, I wouldn't say it's like ready to go right then and there, but it's a really effective starting point. And yeah, I love that kind of stuff because I would rather spend more time running workshops and focusing on that than synthesizing the information and designing a presentation, since I feel like, the discovery that happens in the workshop is the magical part.
Yeah, I just love all of this from the pre-sales point of view of I feel like the best work I can do when I'm working with customers that have large problems and we're trying to figure out is Conveyor a fit for this problem is like really rolling up the sleeves and working with them on the solution, like a solutions consultant. And the AI tools that we're talking about here just make it so much better to get to a point where you are now looking at a solution together that is custom, that reflects the conversations and the workshops that you've done with that customer, as opposed to let me just grab some asset that exists off a shelf that's like, this is kind of what they're talking about, but it's like not exactly the pain point they're describing. And it's just like, thank goodness we can move in a better direction where everything is tailored and it's much easier to get to that tailored collaborative content.
And I'd be remiss to not point out as well. I mean, from a Conveyor perspective, not everyone might be familiar with Conveyor. But if you're not, I mean, it's very much. I mean, and now Chris, I'll let you speak to this a little bit more, just for a couple minutes here as well. They're obviously partnering. They're actually sponsoring this this webinar, they play in this space as well around, I think, getting their start in security document responses. So a lot of that, again, why would you do all this work over and over again when the documents live somewhere else, helping with that. I know you've recently moved into actually the RFP space as well. So, I mean, if I see some things in chat asking about that, so if that's the way that you're thinking, Chris, I'll let you say anything else that I may have said wrong as well, or I may have left out around there as well, but definitely consider Conveyor for that at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep it short so that it doesn't feel like when you're listening to a podcast and the podcast host starts suddenly talking about like his underwear or his socks, and you're like, oh, this is the paid portion. But no, we are we're sponsoring this event here, but it's definitely relevant for everyone on the call. We exist to help build trust on the internet, and so those points when two businesses are trying to work together and you get to that point where now there's a lot of questions around trust or even just technical requirements like an RFP or a security questionnaire. Conveyor helps automate those processes. You upload the RFP or the security questionnaire into Conveyor. Our AI will take a first crack at it for you, generating answers based on your content library. And then you can also make those standard documents, whether they're security documents like your SOC 2 Type 2, or if it's more customer enablement collateral, you can make those just available directly to your end customers through a trust center. So yeah, we're all about like helping you focus on the high leverage parts of your job and help you do the parts that are uh, they tend to drag down a sales cycle and it's not really where the value is created in the pre-sales portion. We're trying to help you do that stuff faster so you can focus on the fun value creation steps.
Get back to running those workshops like TJ was saying, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely love it. I do want to shift a little bit of in the next question here because, you know, there may be some people here thinking this is great, but I have nowhere idea where to start. I never knew about Gamma or Beautiful AI or Conveyor or stuff Figma had. So how do you, and Maria, I'd love to hear from you first on this. How do you get either yourself or your teams kind of a base level of understanding or awareness of AI, what things to start considering, what things to start using, how to navigate the landscape? What have you done with your team specifically to kind of help up level everyone's skill around AI?
Yeah, and totally hear you. I think where everyone is in this change curve of AI is different. And so where we've worked with RSCs and sort of meeting them where they're at. So starting with what is today the biggest pain point in your job? Is it the note taking? Is it the follow-ups? Is it creating impactful demos and starting there and introducing AI in those parts of your process? We're not requiring everyone on RSC teams to be identical in the way that they use AI, but more so find where it helps you today and then share out what is working with the rest of the team. And I think that is the best way to get the entire team on board. Because once you hear from someone that they've, been using Granola AI, for example, which is a note-taking app that doesn't necessarily join meetings, to capture all the notes and make it really super short and sweet, able to send it out to teams right after. If that's where you need to start today, that's great. That's one piece of AI that you are using now that you didn't before. And that one I would say is a really, if you haven't heard about Granola AI, it's very easy to use. It doesn't, again, join your calls, but it takes all of your notes, helps with your action items. So if you find that like that's the hardest part is action items after a call, how can I be better at that? Try to solve for the things that are the biggest pains and then go from there. We also do encourage our SCs to share what AI or agents are using today and give some context because I think too that knowledge sharing helps up level everyone and in a way that's a usable use case for the role that we're in today. So that can be hard too if you don't have the context. So encourage that culture of sharing amongst your teams and even be that person. If you are ahead of the change curve, share out with your teams what you're doing and you'll be surprised how open others will share back.
I think I was just saying, I just pulled that up while you were talking about it because now I got to check that out. I love it. TJ, what have you done kind of around the same thing around kind of up leveling your AI and what have you seen work at Figma?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is I think I'm starting from a getting better context. Maybe AI has something to do with it, but we're definitely not leading with like AI is this thing that you need to use. First of all, AI is such a problematic term in general. Like it's so big, it doesn't really mean anything specific. So a lot of times I'm way more focused on like what is the tool, what is the workflow, and we want evidence, not a this could be good for this. It's is it have we proven that it's good? Is like the quality of our output better? Are we able to output more at the same level of quality? And then if we happen to find AI tooling that's allowing us to do that, it's worth considering and it's worth, bringing into our workflows. But I also think it can be a trap if we're just out there looking for an AI tool versus a tool, a good tool. You can spend a lot of cycles like running around looking for new things that don't help you move in the right direction, at least as far from our perspective. So to be honest, I'm really big on practice. Like I think at our team, a lot of what we want is not the hypothetical, but it's like, let's all get on a call and let's actually use the thing and let's discuss the nuance of it. Let's discuss what we create, what we built together. Is it better? And then we kind of build up from that foundation.
I love it. It's, everyone certainly will find themselves at a different spot. Some people being more familiar with it, some people not. But I think it's critical to make sure no matter where you're at, even if you feel like you're literate around it, that you're finding ways to always be learning. And it is true. I think we're at the point, you're right, TJ, where AI seems to be almost like a bad name in some circles. But I think we have to sometimes just move past what the sentiment is to, okay, what's the actual ways that it can help us? Which actually brings me to my next question. Once you've got these tools in place, or once you've got things that you're actually using on a day-to-day, or your teams are using them, how do we make sure that we're not just adding more work? Like back to that whole how long I'm going to spend automating things. How do I know and make sure I'm not just adding more things to my plate or my team's plate versus something that's going to replace a process or actually improve a process? I guess TJ, back to you kind of on that one. How do you make sure the stuff that you're working on is not just adding more tasks you have to take care of?
I mean, that's a hard question because I don't know if I always get it right. Like, we're growing, we're adapting to a technical landscape that is changing like wild. And it's a constant battle. I'll just say that. So I don't want to give this air that we've totally figured it out. That said, that's why I tend to lean on practice. I just think anytime an SC team is getting more hands-on with the technology, it's better. Like everyone's going to benefit, the team will benefit. And we're really just focused on outputs as the measure of proof. Like we want to bring everyone together, but I also don't, kind of to the previous point, like everyone on our teams will have different specialties, will have different strengths and areas that they want to improve in. So even now, we haven't found a fully like blanket AI solution that we just want everyone embedding in their day-to-day every day. Now that said, we want the work that we're doing, particularly a lot of the work we're doing with Figma's AI products, to reflect the ideal. And I only say that because we're constantly like charging towards a caliber of quality, this higher quality standard. And so when we think about thoughtfully bringing in these tools, that's what I'm often focused on is, are we connecting the team more and improving how we collaborate and build together? Are we connecting with our customers more, or are we improving quality? And if any of an answer to any of those things is no, then it's very rarely not worth the time to invest and to really enable and build that thing out within our team. But also curious, Maria's perspective.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's so true. What's the before and after? And did it actually help you save time? Did it make you more efficient? Did it make you more creative in that sense? I think that's definitely something that resonates with what our team's been doing is like, how is this actually helping me or hindering me from making my job easier? And something too that I've thought about is like it's never done, right? It's like not a one and done training. It's ever evolving. And I think it's whatever you're using today. I mean, I bet in 3 months from now, it's going to be a totally different tool set. And maybe there's going to be new things. Maybe we leave off some. Other things I'm thinking about too is how does it seamlessly integrate with the tool stacks we use today? Because it can be a pain to have to go to one place and another place. And it's kind of creating a lot of the problems we're trying to solve for our customers is everything is all in disparate systems. So as we kind of can introduce more AI, more agents, like how seamless of an integration is this to our current workflow is something that I bet is going to be the next step in a lot of people's, minds for integrating AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree there. I'm tracking the chat as well going along here, and I've seen a couple questions kind of asking about kind of that it gets into a little bit of the ethics of some of these tools that we use, or potentially it's a little bit around ensuring that what we're doing is meeting with privacy. We're not overreaching that. We're not giving up information because AI or not, a lot of times there's companies behind this, and what information are we giving to them? So I guess a kind of a question on there as we're looking into that, what if, as you're looking at embracing new tools, embracing new um, AI capabilities, what are sort of the ethical considerations that come into play that you have to keep track of when it comes to that? I'll throw this out to anyone on the panel because I know it's kind of a different type of a question here, so I don't want to put anyone on the spot. But TJ, Maria, Chris, anyone want to hop in here?
I can jump in. One resource that I've actually just stumbled upon in the last few weeks is the UNESCO recommendations of ethics of AI. I'm actually gonna share this with my team meeting later, but it outlines 10 core principles of like a human rights approach to AI ethics. One that's very obvious is bias. The AI is biased in the data it's getting. So, I think for me, when I think about AI and as it scales across the team, ensuring that there isn't any bias and that as we're looking at the answers, we're also asking the questions back of like, well, why did it come up with this, right? Like, how did it get to this answer? And not necessarily just taking AI's response as the only response or the right response. I think it's okay to question AI back. And if you are using Gemini, ChatGPT, asking for the sources, asking how it got to that, even asking for the contrast, like how did you get to the answer, but also what's the contrast of that answer, sort of thing. Um, and also, too, I don't believe AI should be used to replace SEs or anyone, in a client-facing role. If anything, it should help SEs focus on strategic work, high-value engagements, again, that empathy piece and that emotional intelligence. AI just can't get there yet, and that critical thinking. So, if anything, I really think it's helping our teams focus on that more versus the things that today that bog them down in their role. But I'm curious, TJ or Chris, what
Yes.
your thoughts are.
I totally agree with that take, and I love the shout out for the UNESCO recommendations. I think all of this talk that we're hearing about AI completely replacing people, I think it's woefully misguided. One, just based off of my experience and the experience of my customers and my teammates, it's not at a level where it can replace the work that we do yet. It's not even close. And I even think it's a wild risk to want to take that for your business, because similar to what we were talking about in the chat, like trust is everything. I think that's one of the reasons we've had such a productive partnership with Conveyor is we see customer trust as like genuinely the focus and the foundation of all the work that we do. So AI or not, are we building trust with customers? Normally that involves obviously that can be augmented with great technology and great tooling, but there's nothing quite like humans in a room meeting and doing the work. So ethical considerations aside, I definitely think we should be leaning more into how are we enabling our people and our teams? How are we building greater trust with our customers? And if we're working from that base, I think we'll be a lot more successful in general. And I think that's where we're going to eventually head, to be honest. I think we'll start to see less and less of this doomer mentality, might be one way to put it. And I definitely think that's the aspiration. Like AI in a vacuum doesn't make sense. We need humans there, and it's an extension of us. It's a tool, a technology that we use.
Yeah. Like said Earth's comment here in the chat, AI like calculator. We still need to learn math to use a calculator. Very true. Like you still need to understand what's going on. It can't completely replace. We're not at that point. I am keeping track of the time here. I do want to encourage. I've seen one question come through so far. We do have a Q&A we'll be doing here in just a little bit. So if you have questions, maybe you've asked them in the chat and we've missed them so far, maybe you just have another question top of mind, there's a Q&A box at the bottom. So feel free to click on that, open it up, throw questions in there. We'll get to the Q&A here after our next question, after our panel goes through kind of our final question I want to ask them. Also make sure you're doing that. Final question I have before we get to the Q&A. I'd love to hear kind of the top thought on one area you think AI will always, even if we think about AI getting better and better and better, which it will do, what's one area you think there will always need to be a human partnership in order to succeed? Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts first on where you think that will be.
Yeah, I think just building off of what TJ mentioned, and thank you, Maria, for sharing that UNESCO report. For us, there's this thing called trust, and trust is paramount. And it's maybe not always the first thing you think about in like pre-sales or maybe like solutions consulting, is this concept of trust. But at some point, you are asking someone to place their trust in you and to partner with you on something that hopefully is big and ambitious and transformative. And AI can automate parts of that. But where I see the value of humans in this, and no matter how good the AI gets, I think that, over 80,000 years of evolution, we have just evolved certain things where if you're like thinking about making a risky endeavor, it's just really helpful to look a human in the eye and say like, I can trust you, right? And then see a human face nod back. And so to me, there's always that element of like the final bridge of trust is going to be led by human. And I love like ironically, one of my favorite AI apps is 11 Labs, which does AI generated voices. But I do think we will just never fully cross the uncanny valley when AIs are trying to, literally like video and voice live generating and imitating a human. We will never, because of just 80,000 years of evolution, we are never going to cross the uncanny valley where that replaces looking a human in the eye and say and feeling that like emotional connection of trust. Maybe this is hopeful. I hope this is true. But yeah, so I feel like, especially for a pre-sales audience, there's always this element that you are actively building trust with your customer, and that is paramount and cannot be replaced.
Love
Yeah,
it. Trust,
I would,
absolutely. TJ.
my take on that is like, I hope that doesn't happen soon. I do believe it will happen. I think we're already seeing a certain amount of radical improvement in the quality of AI. That doesn't mean that every prompt and output has lacks that uncanny valley, but people that are using these tools kind of on the bleeding edge are able to design around it and able to use these tools in a way where the output feels better versus all of the AI generated kind of like mess that we see out there. I still think people are able to get beyond that. But fundamentally, like on principle, I think we need more humans. And I still think there's a future where as people learn to use these tools, as the tools get better, all that really matters is the output. And yeah, I'm anchored on the fact that I still think I am being enhanced and empowered and creating more and better things. And I don't see that going away anytime soon, but it's a big topic. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all kind of predicting what will happen next too, just like these LLMs are. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, to add to that too, AI has definitely helped you, TJ, in like getting solutions faster, better, and into customers. And I think that's the goal, right? Is that human element is still there because you're the one delivering it. Like at the end of the day, customers who probably meet you and then maybe another SC from another company or competitor, maybe you both are delivering a similar solution, but because you've been able to save the time in building the things and now you can actually invest in the relationship and getting to know them better. That's a thing I think is hard for AI to get right, is like navigating internal politics. So like reading the room or like in a Zoom like this, it's really hard to understand like, oh, maybe that person is not interested because of XYZ. It's really looking at the transcript and understanding what their responses are. But like those things, I don't know that AI is there yet. Maybe one day, but I think, yeah, those unique team dynamics, and you've probably been able to like iterate on things because of, um, some positive reactions that maybe, AI can't get yet in a video. But again, maybe soon. But I do agree that doubling down on the building trust and navigating ambiguity. I think that's still a really tough thing to navigate. The politics, I'm sure we all see it in our deals. There's some things that we can't really nail down on paper even. We almost have to discuss it with our reps and understanding like, did you get that vibe? Or they didn't really seem that interested, even though they were saying all the right things. But I do think that's where human partnership is still needed, is that like deep empathetic understanding of like where the customer's at, what can we do to win the deal, and just being creative. I think there's a million ways to solve for customer challenges. I think AI can probably give us the 10 different ways, but it's understanding which one's the best fit for them at this time. And are we ensuring that we're listening to them? Because we could solve it again in many different ways, but which way resonates the most with them and where they're at?
Yeah, I actually really like this topic. This is, I think, a very interesting thing. And predictions aside, when some kind of AI tool is better at me than building trust and connecting with my customers and motivating sales and creating shared visions, I think I'll be excited, because at that point, I know I'm starting to move beyond like the current kind of plateau. But until we're there, and I'm not convinced we're even close yet, I think it's a game of building trust and using these tools to help you do better at those kinds of things that help you move the sale. Uh, so yeah, can an LLM read the room, and can it build a cohesive, amazing shared vision with the customer and tailor a presentation and a proposal so that the entire organization is motivated by it? Like in the future, if that's possible, that's going to be awesome. But for now, they kind of need us. These tools need us to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Love it. Well, thanks so much to Maria, TJ, Chris. I appreciate you joining, everyone who's joining the chat and joined the webinar, joined the conversation. Thank you for being here. And thanks as well to Conveyor, as we said, for sponsoring the webinar. We will be doing more webinars very soon. So if you haven't yet, make sure you are hooked into our Slack or are following us on LinkedIn to see the next webinar. And we'll see everyone on the next one. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.